If you're over 60, you can eat what looks like a perfectly normal diet and still slowly lose something that's much harder to get back. Muscle. Maybe you notice it when you stand up. You push a little harder on the armrests than you used to. The grocery bags feel heavier. Stairs take a little more effort. Or your legs simply don't feel as powerful as they once did. It's easy to look at those changes and think, that's just getting older. But that isn't the whole story. As you get older, your muscles can become less responsive to the protein you eat. That means the eating habits that seemed perfectly fine years ago may not support your muscles in quite the same way after 60. So does that mean you need an expensive protein powder? A giant steak every night? Chicken at every meal? Not necessarily. Because one surprisingly useful option costs only a few dollars, requires no cooking, and can be added to foods you may already eat. Pumpkin seeds. They don't exactly look like a muscle-building food. But pumpkin seeds contain plant protein, along with magnesium, zinc, healthy fats, and other nutrients. And they're incredibly easy to add to an ordinary diet. But here's the part that matters. Pumpkin seeds are not a magic muscle-building food. Simply adding a few seeds to a meal that's otherwise low in protein may not give aging muscles everything they need. Their real value becomes much clearer when you understand how much protein you're actually getting, what that protein can and can't do on its own, how much you should realistically eat, and what you should eat with it. And there's one more piece that's even more important. Food can give your muscles the building material. But your muscles still need a reason to use it. So before we build the meal, we need to understand what actually changes inside your muscles after 60. Because once you understand that, pumpkin seeds start making a lot more sense. Muscle loss doesn't suddenly begin on your 60th birthday. It's usually much quieter than that. A little less muscle. A little less strength. And over time, everyday things that once felt effortless can start requiring more work. But there's another change happening that you can't see. Your muscles may become less responsive to the protein you eat. Researchers sometimes call this anabolic resistance. The name sounds complicated. The idea doesn't have to be. Think of the protein you eat as providing your muscles with material they can use to maintain and repair themselves. When you're younger, your muscles may respond strongly to that protein. As you get older, the same amount may not produce quite the same response. In simple terms, aging muscle may need a stronger protein stimulus. And that's why simply saying, "I eat protein," doesn't tell us very much. Maybe there's a little milk with breakfast. A small amount of protein at lunch. And then most of your protein arrives with dinner. Getting enough protein across the entire day still matters. But after 60, it can also be useful to look at your meals individually. Ask one simple question. Where is the protein? You don't need to obsess over every gram. And you certainly don't need to turn every meal into an enormous plate of meat. The point is simply to notice whether your meals are actually giving your muscles meaningful amounts of protein to work with. Because I ate some protein today, and I'm giving my muscles enough protein to work with, aren't necessarily the same thing. And that brings us back to pumpkin seeds. They contain protein. But the more useful question is, how much are you actually getting from the amount you'd realistically eat? This is where pumpkin seeds get interesting. Because you may hear that pumpkin seeds are high in protein. And that's true in one sense. But there's an important difference between how much of a food is protein by weight and how much protein ends up on your plate in a normal serving. Think about it this way. You probably aren't going to sit down and eat an enormous bowl of pumpkin seeds as your dinner. A much more realistic amount is around an ounce. That's roughly a small handful. And depending on the product, that amount provides around 8 grams of protein. Useful? Absolutely. But now compare that with the way people sometimes talk about seeds online. You might hear, "Pumpkin seeds are packed with protein," and walk away thinking, "Great. I'll sprinkle some over my breakfast and my protein problem is solved." Not necessarily. Because a food can be high in protein by percentage without giving you a huge amount of protein in the portion you actually eat. Imagine a bowl of oatmeal. Add a small handful of pumpkin seeds. Now you've added protein, texture, healthy fats, minerals, and calories. That's useful. But the seeds haven't suddenly transformed that bowl into an enormous protein meal. And that's actually the best way to think about pumpkin seeds. Not as some secret replacement for every other protein food, but as a useful contributor that can make an ordinary meal better. And that leads to the next question. If pumpkin seeds contain protein, is that protein enough by itself to give aging muscle the strongest response we're looking for? That's where protein quality enters the picture. Not all protein sources are identical. And this doesn't mean one is good and another is bad. It simply means different foods contain different amounts and combinations of amino acids. Amino acids are the smaller building blocks that make up protein. And one of them comes up frequently when researchers talk about muscle protein synthesis. Leucine. Now, don't turn leucine into another number you have to obsess over. The useful idea is much simpler. Protein provides amino acids your body can use, and leucine is one of those amino acids involved in stimulating muscle protein synthesis. Pumpkin seeds contribute protein and amino acids. But that doesn't mean a small handful of seeds should automatically become the only protein source in your meal. This is where pairing becomes useful. Maybe you add pumpkin seeds to Greek yogurt, or oatmeal made with milk. Maybe you eat them alongside eggs. Add them to a meal containing cottage cheese, or combine them with other plant foods as part of a varied diet. Now the pumpkin seeds have a much more realistic role. They're contributing protein, nutrients, texture, and calories to a meal that already has a meaningful protein foundation. And notice what we're not saying. We're not saying pumpkin seeds are useless because they're a plant food. And we're not saying you need to calculate the amino acid profile of everything on your plate. We're simply asking a better question then. Does this food contain protein? The better question is, what does the whole meal provide? But there's another mistake that's very easy to make once you hear pumpkin seeds are nutritious. If a little is good, wouldn't a lot be even better? Not exactly. Pumpkin seeds are small. And that's exactly why it's easy to underestimate them. You can grab a handful, then another, then keep eating straight from the bag without thinking much about it. But pumpkin seeds contain a significant amount of fat and calories in a relatively small amount of food. That isn't automatically a bad thing. Those fats are part of what makes pumpkin seeds nutritious and satisfying. The problem is assuming healthy food equals unlimited food. Remember our roughly 1 ounce serving? That small handful gives you around 8 grams of protein. It also comes with a meaningful amount of calories. Double or triple the portion, and you're not just doubling or tripling the protein. You're increasing everything else too. So for most people, the goal isn't to sit down with the bag and keep eating because protein is good for muscle. Start much smaller. Think of pumpkin seeds as an addition to the meal, not the meal itself. Sprinkle them over yogurt. Add some to oatmeal. Use them on a salad. Or have a measured portion as part of a snack. And if you're buying salted pumpkin seeds, take a quick look at the sodium on the label too. Different products can vary. Now we have the food part in perspective. But there's still a much bigger problem. You could eat enough protein every day and still miss one of the most important things your muscles need. Because muscle isn't maintained by food alone. This may be the most important part of the entire video. Protein gives your body material it can use. But if you want your muscles to stay capable, they also need to be challenged. Resistance gives your muscles the reason. Protein gives them material to work with. And resistance doesn't automatically mean joining a gym and becoming a bodybuilder. It can mean resistance bands, light weights, appropriate bodyweight movements, or exercises such as repeated chair stands, when they're safe and appropriate for you. The exact exercise depends on your health, mobility, and current ability. But the principle is what matters. Your muscles adapt when you ask them to do work. Then nutrition helps provide the material needed for repair and maintenance. That's why the strongest muscle supporting strategy isn't find one superfood and eat it every day. It's the combination of adequate nutrition and an appropriate muscle strengthening stimulus. And this becomes especially important with age. Because maintaining muscle after 60 isn't really about trying to look like you did at 25. It's about function. Standing up confidently, carrying your groceries, climbing stairs, staying active, and holding on to as much physical independence as you can. So now we know where pumpkin seeds fit. But that raises a much more practical question. How much protein should you actually be trying to get in a day? This is where numbers can become confusing very quickly. So let's keep it simple. The standard adult protein recommendation is commonly given as about 0.8 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight per day. But here's the important distinction. The basic minimum isn't necessarily the same thing as the amount that may best support aging muscle. Some expert groups and research focused on older adults have discussed intakes around 1.0 to 1.2 grams per kilogram per day for many healthy older adults, depending on the person and their circumstances. Let's make that more relatable. A person who weighs about 150 pounds weighs roughly 68 kilograms. At 0.8 grams per kilogram, that's around 54 grams of protein per day. At 1.0 gram per kilogram, it's around 68 grams. And at 1.2, it's roughly 82 grams. That doesn't mean everyone over 60 should immediately aim for the highest number. And it doesn't mean you need to count every gram for the rest of your life. It simply shows why. I had some protein today may not tell you whether you're actually getting enough. And now our pumpkin seeds make even more sense. A small handful contributing around 8 grams can certainly help. But you can see why it shouldn't be expected to carry an entire day's protein needs. Your other meals still matter. And there's an important exception here. If you have kidney disease or another medical condition that affects how much protein is appropriate for you, don't use a generic internet protein target as your personal prescription. Your needs may be different, so follow the guidance of your healthcare professional. For everyone else, you don't need to turn your kitchen into a nutrition laboratory. You can make this much simpler. Let's build a normal day of eating. Start with breakfast. Maybe you normally eat yogurt and fruit. Keep the yogurt, and add a small portion of pumpkin seeds for extra protein, texture, and nutrients. Or maybe you eat oatmeal. Instead of expecting pumpkin seeds to provide all the protein, make the oatmeal with milk or pair it with another protein-rich food, then add the seeds. Lunch can work the same way. You might have a salad or grain bowl with beans, eggs, chicken, tuna, tofu, or another protein source you enjoy. Add pumpkin seeds on top. And for a snack, you might combine a small portion of pumpkin seeds with something like yogurt or another food that helps round it out. The idea is simple. Don't replace your protein source with pumpkin seeds. Use pumpkin seeds to add to it. You don't need pumpkin seeds at every meal. And you don't need to build your entire diet around one food. You're simply using an inexpensive food strategically inside meals that already make sense. And once you see it that way, the entire video becomes much simpler. So if you remember only one thing from this video, make it this. Pumpkin seeds can help support the plan. They are not the plan. The bigger goal is to give your muscles what they need consistently. Get enough protein across the day. Look for meals that barely contain any and strengthen those first. Use a sensible portion of pumpkin seeds where they fit naturally. And give your muscles an appropriate reason to stay strong through regular resistance or strengthening activity. But don't try to change everything tomorrow morning. Start with the weakest point in your current routine. Maybe your breakfast barely contains protein. Start there. Maybe you're already eating well but doing almost nothing that challenges your muscles. That's probably the more important place to look. Maybe you simply want an inexpensive way to add a little more protein and nutrition to foods you already enjoy. That's where pumpkin seeds can be useful. Because after 60, protecting muscle isn't really about chasing bigger muscles. It's about making ordinary life easier for as long as possible. Getting out of your chair. Carrying your groceries. Taking the stairs. Staying active. And protecting the independence that comes with being able to do those things yourself. So if pumpkin seeds are already part of your diet, tell me in the comments how you usually eat them. And if they're not, tell me which meal in your day could use a better source of protein. If you know someone over 60 who's trying to stay strong, share this video with them. And subscribe to Health Lab Digest for simple, research-based health information that helps you make smarter decisions after 60. Because the goal isn't to find one perfect food. It's to build everyday habits that give your muscles a better reason, and better material, to stay strong.